No, but why do they get pulled over? Because like even though white people commit as many crimes and they have more drugs, it's a known fact that white people have a lot more drugs on their person when they pull over.
So they're more likely to speed.
They're more likely
to speed on the road.
Who is?
Black guys.
White people, I speed every fucking day.
Well, it doesn't matter what you speed. We're talking about statistics.
I'm just saying.
You're asking why black guys are more likely to get pulled over because they're more likely to speed.
But it's not even debatable anymore.
Through white neighborhoods, they get pulled over because of the color of their skin.
There's a reason why police across the country are undergoing implicit bias training, because it's recognized at the federal level that this is something that exists. That racism exists on an implicit level because of historical fact. It's not really something debatable, dog. If you look at the foundations of this country, there are legacies that carry over to present day.
It's not an argument. You have to look at the statistics.
I'm talking about the statistics.
Joel, the argument is that the black guys are pulled over more often. This argument is not true because they are just as likely to speed more.
You're talking about two different
I don't know, man. I'm talking about historical context.
A lot more for drugs. I'm like, why did you pull me over? I assume you have drugs on your person. They get arrested for not having drugs or get pulled over the police assume they have drugs and they get pulled over 10 times more often than white people who are 4 times more likely to have drugs on their person.
But they can only find out about the drugs after the pullover, right? The pullover happens when they don't have the information, right?
But the police, do you depends on the police to pull over that person?
So do you think,
they suspect the drugs
is it, okay, there are over 30 million black people in this country. There are also...
about 15% of the population.
Sure, there are also millions of people who are Latino. Generally, it's claimed by these populations that the police pull them over more often, that treat them differently than their white friends, than other white people they know. Are these millions of people making this up? Is it a coordinated effort to victimize themselves, to deflect blame for their own behaviors? Is that what you're saying? Because when you have millions of people who are claiming this is an issue, how can you sort of question that? I mean, what is your basis for questioning that when millions of people are claiming?
Statistics, right? What do you mean by millions of people are claiming? What exactly they're claiming? And what is the data?
I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm talking about people who know and who say that they're treated differently by police than white people. And it's not just them.
That's why we have data and the research, right?
Okay, there's plenty
of data. There's a bunch of people who can claim whatever they want.
Okay, well, what's your data?
FBI.
Okay, well, what's...
Bias source.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of research data, right? But FBI is one of them,
FBI data, I mean, it's well documented fact that people of color are persecuted by police more often than white people, disproportionately. But by absolute terms, there are probably more white people in prison, more white people arrested, but in terms of proportionality of the population of this country, it's undeniable that people of color...
I totally agree here, but if you compare it with the number of crimes they commit, then the percentages are equalized.
Well, then you have to consider where is crime concentrated, and where these parts of the country where people of color have been relegated to live have been systematically put there through redlining, through all these sorts of systematic oppressions that date back to slavery.
Crime isn't a color thing, it's a poverty thing.
It's
not true.
It is true, actually. It's something that corresponds
during the Great Depression, did everybody start stealing and killing? Not true, but everybody got immediately much more poor.
That corresponds to
crime didn't increase.
It's something that corresponds to geography. Ghettoization is something that is not exclusive to the United States. It was also something that happened in Nazi Germany with the Jews. It also happened, I mean, it happens all over the world, wherever there's a minority that's marginalized in the country in which they live. Black people clearly have been marginalized in the United States since they were brought over against their will. Latinos as well as Asians. I mean, Asians not to the extent that of other populations, but I mean, it's a well-documented common sense fact that if a population is marginalized in a country, it's relegated to a neighborhood of poverty, a community of poverty.
So what about,
and in those circumstances, crime flourishes because there's less material resources.
Okay, what about Asians?
More of a,
Asians.
Okay, I mean,
they're a minority here, and they do better than white.
Okay.
So
they can eat.
that black people do.
First of all, the legacy.
No. The argument was that there's a minority, right? That is marginalized.
Second of all,
hold on. You had time. Let me make the argument.
I know.
The argument was, you know, the argument about Asians, right? You said there there's a minority that's marginalized, and that's why they're poor, and that's why there's so many crimes.
Asian Americans, the circumstances under which Asian Americans came to this country was through economic policy, was an immigration policy that opened the door to Asians of a particular skill set. This is in the 50s and the 60s. Asians who had skills in mathematics, skills in science, were welcomed under the Johnson administration, I believe. And that's the reason why now there's the stereotype that Asian Americans are better at math, they're better at science.
Which is also racist, by the way.
Which is also racist.
What's racist?
That they are better at things, or that there can be this beneficial racism.
No, that's a fact. They have higher IQ, they have much fewer crimes, they commit much fewer crimes, and they have much higher standard of living.
What I'm saying though is if you don't know the history of how the United States accepted certain Asians from the continent, then you can't really talk about the disparity in the races.
But it's not an argument.
It's not an argument.
You know the history.
I'm saying
right?
You need to be educated on the history of how people got to this country. Asians came to this country under different circumstances.
But it's not an argument to circumstances, right? You have to propose a theory how the circumstances affected the fact that they commit more crimes, right? Do you know the argument about IQ? If we normalize all the races by their IQ, then let's say whites with an IQ of 85, that would be an average for blacks, commit exactly the same number of crimes as blacks in any country.
Have you looked at the history of the IQ?
Ashkenazi Jews, they are on the top of IQ, then Asians, then whites, then Hispanics and blacks, right?
Well, I mean,
and so if you equalize them, right,
who invented
then people,
the IQ test?
It doesn't matter who invented IQ test.
It fucking matters.
It doesn't matter.
Was it a black guy who invented the IQ test? Was it an Asian guy? Was it a Hispanic guy?
It's not an argument.
It was probably a European guy.
It's not an argument. Hold on, let me finish. So, if you normalize by IQ, then you can see people with the same IQ, no matter what race they are, they have the same standard of living, they commit about the same number of crimes, and they are just as happy. It doesn't matter what race you are. IQ is the best predictor of your standard of living.
No, it's really not.
Yeah, okay.
Based on what you're saying.
IQ come from? It comes from an educational system, and
Nope.
your education.
It doesn't come from education. You're born and you have a specific IQ. It doesn't change throughout your life.
You are born and you're raised in a particular educational system that has a particular set of resources based on where you're from. That affects your IQ. Whether or not you're born with a household that has a certain amount of resources,
affect your IQ.
Affect your IQ.
Nope.
Yes, where you're educated and how
it doesn't affect your IQ.
Yes,
you can slightly lower the IQ by spanking and by growing without a father, which is extremely common in black community.
Okay, you want to know what? Wait, growing up without a father is common in white communities? Is that what you meant to say, or did you mean black communities?
Black community.
It seems like, okay, so the reason why that is because of mass incarceration and the shredding of the social fabric.
I totally agree. The war on drugs is a horrible thing that will leave a lot of children without a dad.
IQ is based on resources, okay? From the legacy of chattel slavery through to Jim Crow and Reconstruction.
No, IQ is not based on resources.
And how populations became ghettoized. Even after industrialization, they got driven out of the industrial north. Black people did, and got concentrated into certain segments.
Well, you started with IQ is based on resources. That is not true.
I think, okay, when do they test you for IQ? What's
at any time, at any age, you can test for IQ, and throughout our life.
You can test an infant for IQ.
You cannot test an infant.
Okay, so it's not based. So it's not any age. If you can't test an IQ.
Can I recommend a book to you?
Absolutely.
Here, I wrote it down for you. It's called The Big Test. It's the history of IQ testing in the United States, history of SAT testing. It's just a general look at the eugenicist origins of standardized testing and the desire to classify American populations based on their their supposedly inherent intelligence and properties.
I mean, what you're saying is like biological determinism.
All I'm saying is you're speaking of IQ tests as this sort of infallible source of knowledge about a person, but the fact is a person created the IQ test, and it came out of an intellectual milieu that was influenced by eugenicists and social Darwinism.
Not true. No, not true. IQ is not just a random test.
I'm not saying it's
went pretty far.
I'm saying it's a product of a certain intellectual era.
No. It's not a. You not like some people design it on purpose to put down a group.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's the product of a certain intellectual era. In any intellectual era, there are certain ideas that are fed. Phrenology, the idea that like that your head had certain bumps, and that was like indicative of your intelligence. That was an idea in the 1800s. Psychoanalysis has evolved since the 1800s, but it was a fad then. Hysteric.
So you're saying IQ is a false theory, or what's the argument?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that IQ is a product of its intellectual era, inflected by social Darwinism and eugenicist thinking.
So is it a bad thing? You formulate it in a long way.
Why does it have to be a bad or a good thing?
Well, is it true or not true?
It is a thing with history that deserves to be questioned because we don't live in 1894
and it's a theory that has been proven and proven again and again and again.
I'm not saying it's completely without merit, but I'm saying it's not as flawless as you're making it out to be, and that it's inflected with certain biases.
I think it's important to point out that
I agree with that, but what's the argument?
I mean, it's been a discussion for a long time exactly what you're saying, but IQ tests, the whole idea of it is that they've kept it without language, without cultural bias, things like that. It ends up being very consistent, throughout your lifetime. You'll have through different ages of your life, you're going to have a pretty consistent IQ score. Because
but who's measuring whether or not an IQ test is biased or not? Who's measuring whether or not
it's all problem solving. It has nothing to do with language or context of because that's kind of the point of it, is that it's got to be an objective thing. And it's very, it's important because we see it reflect in like earning potential later in life or skills and, creativity, things like that.
I mean, you have to understand what you're saying though. When you say that this is a fair measure of someone's potential, you're looking at a child if he's black or white or Hispanic, and you're saying this person, when he grows into adult, can only get so far based on this merit.
It's biological determinism, and that's really fucking toxic for our society. To just like the implications of that are that someone can never ever transcend that. That's like a caste system for your fucking mind.
And I'll say, and I'll.
It's reality. You have certain
it's not.
limits,
I mean,
right?
and I'll say this.
You know, if you don't have a high IQ, extremely high IQ.
Where are y'all from?
You know that you're not going to be like
the high schools that you guys went to. Were they majority
as great as people
white?
who have like 2 standard deviation IQ higher
I mean, don't be ashamed if they were.
And it's totally cool. You can still do tons of great things in your life.
So I've been on both ends of the spectrum.
But it's kind of, if you know that you are not like super tall, right, you're not going to be as great probably basketball player, right? And it's reality, right?
We're talking on the same terms here because I'm not even sure what you mean by IQ test. Like, explain to me what the fuck you're saying. Like, why can't you test an infant versus somebody of a later age?
It's an ability of your brain to, in plain language, to solve problems quickly and efficiently and come up with unusual solutions.
Okay, sure. I still don't understand how that's not affected by the resources that you are brought up with. Yeah, like I don't see that as being divorced from the conditions upon which you are brought up and raised and which you are educated in.
Well, there have been a lot of tests that show that income and resources don't exactly translate to higher IQs.
Okay, so if you were to raise a child in a room with nothing and you were to only ever feed that child, like you relegated that child and you didn't give them any contact, you didn't give them anything, would their IQ be the same? You cannot divorce like someone's IQ with this test from the fucking material reality. Yeah, how they're raised. I'm sorry, but that is you're trying to make this absolute. That's not true.
There's a difference between resources and how a child's treated when they're raised. I mean, so there are a lot of environmental factors. So like corporal punishment has been known to bring IQ down. You have that. You have like bonding with parents. There's not a strong bond. There's definitely going to be issues.
Okay, so it's affected by your material reality. Yeah.
Not material reality, not necessarily.
Your parents bonding with you is a material? What is that? What is it?
Well, you're talking about actual resources like money, house.
Yeah, your parents loving you is a resource.
So resources are sometimes going to affect the time that your parents can have with you. That might be part of it, but
yeah. Your parents are working 3 fucking jobs. Yeah, they're not going to be able to spend as much time with you. That affects you. You cannot divorce it. You're making it this absolute, and that's fucking toxic. That's not true. And I think Aaron's right.
You can't say it's toxic if it's based in reality. You can say
what reality? Whose reality? What reality that benefits you?
Reality of your nature, right? If you can say if you have a certain height, then it's toxic to tell a child that you're not gonna be very likely an extremely good basketball player, right? You're not gonna be super tall because your genes tell you that you're gonna be only that high.
Okay,
and you're saying it's extremely toxic.
You're saying reality is not subjective. You're talking about genes. You're talking about biological determinism, like whatever the fuck you're fucking talking about.
It's not determinism. It's just a reality, right?
Yeah, it's biological determinism. It's a fucking intellectual caste system.
You can call it whatever you want, but it's the fact of reality.
It's an intellectual caste system, and it is, in fact, in reality, in material reality, not a subjective thing affected by the conditions by which you are brought up in. How much contact you get, whether or not you're even fucking fed breast milk, is going to affect your fucking conditions. Yes.
You can bring it down, but you can get it
You're
more.
not going to build it up.
Yeah.
It is not an absolute. It is, in fact, affected by your conditions.
Well, a lot of
and
people
there is a disparity in the conditions by which fucking white versus people of color live in.
White people made the IQ test. Rich white people perpetuate its usage. Rich white people do the test.
Also, it's not divorce.
It's so fucking
it is
obvious.
not.
That's all I'm gonna say. Is y'all gotta look at who designs these tests. What culture are they from? Who decides?
It is not an argument who designed the test.
Fucking open. You're not so smart as you think you are. If you're not,
It is not an argument. If you want to participate in a debate, you have to use arguments.
You're not as smart as you think you are.
It's not an absolute. It's not. I'm not even arguing that. I'm arguing that you're trying to make it an absolute indicator of reality, and what your reality that you're basing on, you're trying to divorce from some of these conditions by which they're raised. And what I'm saying is that's fucking impossible. And I think anybody trying to actually faithfully make that argument would have to admit that.
No, we see in the data that it's a good predictor for how somebody's going to do in life. Now, there are very high IQ individuals that do nothing and live in poverty the rest of their life. I mean, so it's give and take. It's not an absolute.
Yeah. I mean, I think, your conditions are going to affect you.
Right. But
you agree.
It is a good indicator of how much value, like intellectual value, you can bring into the world, and a lot of people will earn based on that.
Why? So, because our fucking economic system is designed based around
bringing people value. So if you bring somebody value, you're probably going to make.
I'm sorry, but I'm not sure that the people on Wall Street who are doing trading are actually bringing me a whole lot of value. I don't feel like they
about
are.
the people who.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the 1% is bringing me a fuck ton of value. I'm just not convinced.
Those aren't the only people that are making good money.
The people who are making the most money actually don't actually deal in any material production. They don't even actually make things anymore. They just trade.
Finance is production too, but
no, dude. The way financialization has worked and played out now, and on especially with globalized capitalism, is even less has way less of a connection to actual products being produced. Like,
but it
it's
doesn't have to be products being produced. It can be services too.
No, it's literally bets. Like it's a casino fucking game. It's like trading on bets and hedge funds and like things like that. Like it's not actually connected.
Historically, loans will bring the availability of capital to people who don't have it. So if somebody is, not as good off, they can take a loan, build a business, and many times in history, that's brought great things. I mean, all kinds of entrepreneurship. And you see in countries
as a fucking dagger against you to put you into debt. This is how the whole international institutions.
Everybody has a choice whether to do it or not, and not all bets are good.
We do this to countries.
Guys, let's get back to the original argument because we can move forever, jumping from one thing to another.
I'm sorry, but I fundamentally disagree with you that IQ is absolute. That it's somehow divorced.
What do you mean by absolute?
That you're saying it's an absolute indicator of reality. That it's biologically determined.
It's not absolute. It's statistically,
you are
right?
arguing. Are you not? Answer this question for me. Are you not arguing that IQ is biologically determined?
It is biologically determined.
Then you're a fucking fascist. I'm sorry.
What's your definition of being a fascist?
You're getting at eugenics fundamentally. biological.
Yeah, it sounds like something that I don't agree with.
Eugenics.
What's your definition of being a fascist?
I just gave you a fucking answer. Listen to me. You're talking about something that gets very close to eugenics, biological determinism, that people are fundamentally what their genes are. This is connected to eugenics.
So data, science, and facts are fascist?
I disagree with you that your data,
And that's
facts,
why
and
I'm
science.
fascist?
I fundamentally and absolutely disagree with you that your data, facts, and science are absolute and an indicator of reality.
Repeat your definition of being a fascist then.
I mean, there are a lot of
In the context for me calling you a fascist at this particular moment is about eugenics and biological determinism, which I've already said about 3 or 4 times.
You're putting words in his mouth.
So I'm making a statement about the reality, and I'm fascist because of that?
Are you not arguing that IQ is based on biological determinism? Answer the question one more time, please. Yes.
Absolutely.
I am calling you very close to a eugenicist, which also to me connects to fascism.
Eugenicism is a purposeful modification of breeding, of giving incentives to breed certain organisms among people, right?
Everything
Being a
you have
fascist is to
implied-
advocate violence against other people. I'm stating
that
a
you have
fact
applied
about our
in this
reality.
conversation
I'm a
lends
fascist
itself towards
by
eugenicism.
making a fact about IQ, about biology. How does this make me a fascist? It can make my argument wrong, but it can never make me a fascist by making an argument.
I think everything that you have implied in this conversation lends itself toward those ideas, whether or not you actually want to admit
What
those
ideas?
things
Did
or
I
not.
say that we have to use violence against people anytime throughout our conversation?
You have implied that people are stuck into an intellectual caste system, that their IQ determines what they can, whatever value that they can give to it.
So this is either true or false, but it doesn't make me or you a fascist.
You keep saying that what you're saying is true and that it's data and science. And what I'm trying to tell you and what I've told you maybe 6 or 7 times is that I fundamentally disagree with that.
But it doesn't make me a fascist if you disagree with me.
I think you're a biological determinist, and I would link that up very closely with fascism, in my view.
Well, then your definition of fascism is completely incorrect and horrible, actually. It completely stifles the research, the debates, and everything that can bring our society forward
I think a lot
and in the
of
future.
fascists historically have been biological determinists.
It's not an argument either.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not an argument neither. Fascism is to advocate violence.
For me, it's one of the defining characteristics.
Well, then that's, I guess, your subjective opinion about what fascism is and is incorrect.
Okay, but what makes your definition of fascism the ultimate end-all be-all, just like your definition of IQ? What makes what you have to say the defining
Because
reality?
it's a dictionary definition. It's using a violence to achieve your ends. That's what fascism
Also,
is.
I'm sorry, but fascism, that's actually, I disagree with your fucking definition. It's not fundamentally about violence. It's much more about nationalism than it is about violence.
Fascism
it's nationalism and violence together.
Fascism
but nationalism is also one of, I would say that it's like a core defining tenet.
Now you're switching the subject.
No, I'm not.
Nationalism is
No,
a
I'm
whole
not.
different topic.
I am differing with you on your definition, just like I'm differing with you on your definition of IQ and how it's absolute reality. I don't think that your definition of fashion is actually like reality. Like you are just saying that these things are, by your own authority, that these things are because they come out of the dictionary or because somebody made a test.
Do you have a certain height? Is it absolute height or it's subjective
I
thing?
do not think that the IQ test is actually an indicator of what is reality. I do not think.
Is your height a reality?
I fundamentally disagree with you about
Answer
that
the
as
question.
an indicator.
Is your height an absolute measurement and it's subjective?
I think this is a straw man.
Feet and inches were made by human beings.
I'm
They're made
making
by
it
fascists.
parallel. It's a biological property of your body, same as IQ.
I don't think that my height prevents me from.
It prevents you from doing certain things.
It's not an exact parallel. My height does not prevent me from doing things in the way that you are implying.
I'm not implying.
IQ.
I'm not
A lot
implying.
of low IQ individuals make a lot of money, find success in all kinds of different things.
Okay. Also, I'm not worried about like the connection to money at all. Like I actually don't think that.
And you understand that it's statistics. It means on average. It doesn't mean that if you have a certain IQ that you're guaranteed not to be able to do all of the things. It's statistically on average. If you take a lot of people with this IQ, this is going to be their average income.
I'm sorry, but I'm not worried about that. I don't care about how IQ predicts money. Like, I'm much more worried about what you're saying about IQ putting people into a box. Like, I actually don't think
just answered to your argument saying it's statistically on average. It doesn't say anything about an individual
IQ
person.
It says somewhere. I'm saying I disagree with you. I'm saying that I fundamentally disagree
based on
that
what?
IQ is an indicator
I
of
refer
reality.
to science and data.
I fundamentally disagree with you that your data and your science and your IQ test is actually an indicator of reality. I will not.
Well, can you present some other data, some other studies, some other research?
I do not actually.
Or you can only say that I disagree.
I don't actually think that someone's intellectual capacity, versus logic or creativity, like across the board, what are we measuring? What are we talking about? Like, I know
the
that
intersection of both, because we're talking about solving complex problems in interesting ways.
I just don't think that you can actually measure the totality of somebody's intellectual capacity with a standardized test. I think that that's a Western lens through which we use to measure people. And I think
But we never said it again. I'm repeating it. It's on average. If we take a lot of people, on average, they will have these achievements, this standard of living, this number of crimes,
I don't care about what the IQ indicates about their money or their standard of living.
And again, this is an objective measurement.
You can repeat that you disagree, but you don't provide any other research, any other data. You just say, I disagree with the data that you provide because I don't like it, because it's a fascist data. Well, if facts are fascist,
I never said that it was fascist data. I said that you're a biological determinist, which makes you very close.
By referring to this data, that means that this data, and I am, by providing this data, is somehow related to fascism. And we can't continue, really, unfortunately, this debate if you're gonna call the data and me fascist.
So is it biological determinism